Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call to order our meeting today. This is a meeting of the Housing Policy and Development Committee. I am chair of the committee, Cam Gordon, and I'm joined today by council members Goodman, Bender, and Schrader. We're a quorum of the committee, and we can do our business. We have two public hearings today, some consent items and one discussion item. I'm going to go ahead and read through the consent items and move those together, and if any committee member wants to pull something with questions or comments, we can do that. The first consent item is approving an appropriation for the home program and neighborhood stabilization program income. Next consent item is authorizing a release of a 4D declaration of restricted covenants at 2413 Monroe Street. The next consent item, number 5 on the printed agenda, is release of the conservation easement at 1401 Plymouth Avenue. The sixth item on the agenda on consent is the St. Anthony Mills Apartments Tax Increment Financing District decertification. Item 7 is approving our 2019 Emergency Solutions Grant funding recommendations for 3 different projects. And the last consent item, number 8 on the agenda, is authorizing an amendment to the form documents for the Minneapolis 4D Affordable Housing Incentive Program. Seeing no comments or questions, I will move the consent agenda forward for approval. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, say no. Those items are approved. Then we'll move on to our public hearing items. We have 2 public hearings today. The first is on the preliminary and final approval of tax-exempt housing revenue entitlement bonds for 14th and Central, and we're going to get a report on that first, and then we'll open the public hearing. Welcome.
Hi, thank you, Chair Gordon, and the rest of the committee. My name is Jamie Regal, and I'm a Senior Project Coordinator in CPED's Residential Finance Team. I'm bringing forward a request from 14th and Central LLLP for issuance of up to $32 million in housing revenue entitlement bonds from the City of Minneapolis for the development of the 14th and Central Affordable Housing Development. Located at 854, 902, and 904 14th Avenue Northeast, this project is located in the Logan Park neighborhood of Ward 1. This project includes a development of a 175-unit apartment building and an approximately 5,700 square foot artist-oriented makerspace. The apartment building will include 23 efficiencies, 59 one-bedrooms, 47 two-bedrooms, and 47 two-bedrooms, 42 three-bedrooms, and 5 four-bedroom units. I think I had it switched up. 25 project-based Section 8 vouchers have been awarded to the project, which allow 25 of the 3-bedroom units or family-sized units to be more deeply affordable at 30% AMI. The remaining 150 units will be affordable to households earning 60% AMI. The building will include residential amenities as well as a publicly accessible gallery space. The total development costs for the project are nearly $46.5 million. The development budget includes nearly $4.2 million in developers' fees, which is consistent with the city's tax credit program policy. In July 2019, the City Council approved a tax increment financing plan that would make nearly $3.5 million available to this project in the form of a pay-as-you-go TIF note. In October 2019, the City Council approved support of the Hennepin County HRA's issuance of $4,191,050 of housing revenue bonds, which are expected to be closed upon today and parked until project closing in December. Today's request is for $32 million in tax-exempt multi-family housing revenue bonds. This includes up to $20 million from the city's allocation of entitlement housing revenue bonds, up to $8 million in recycled housing revenue bond volume, up to $8 million in housing revenue bond volume cap recycling, and refunding or refinancing of the nearly $4.2 million in Hennepin County HRA bonds, which will allow this bond issuance to be issued in one series. Staff recommends approval of the resolution authorizing preliminary and final approval of the bonds and a waiver to the city's minimum denomination requirements. With that, I conclude my presentation and happy to answer any questions you may have.
I don't see any questions and don't have any questions. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Then I'll open the public hearing on this item. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak to it? Seeing nobody step forward, then I will close the public hearing, and I will move approval of this item. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, then, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. That motion carries. Congratulations, good work. Now we'll move on to our second public hearing. This is a public hearing on the approval of the project financing for the Seward Commons project. This is at 2200, 2218 Snelling Avenue South. We'll have a presentation, and then we'll open the hearing. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Gordon, members of the committee. I'm Emily Carr, Senior Project Coordinator with CPED. There are several actions before you today related to the Seward Commons redevelopment. And the recommended actions today represent some of the final stages of the transformation of the 4-acre blighted and contaminated Bystrom Brothers industrial area into a mixed income and transit-oriented development. This work over the years has been led by Seward Redesign, a community-based organization. The transformation of this area meets the neighborhood's vision of having affordable and market-rate housing, as well as revitalized commercial space near the Franklin LRT station. This project is an important example of a neighborhood's vision being realized through community-based planning. The redevelopment of this project goes back quite a few years, and throughout this time, the city has been really instrumental in the acquisition and development of the previous phases. In April 2009, the City Council approved an acquisition and concept plan for the redevelopment. And then in June, the city entered into a redevelopment agreement with Seward Redesign for the redevelopment of Seward Commons. Accomplishments to date include 40 units of supportive, affordable housing at Rising Cedar, which is shown, hopefully I can, shown here in phase 1. This was a partnership project between Touchstone Mental Health and Project for Pride in Living. Phase 2 of the project was 60 units of affordable senior housing at the Cooperage, which is a development by Common Bond Communities. And also completed is in this kind of yellow building called the Gateway Building or the Verna Building, which is a revitalized commercial and public plaza space in the redevelopment area. There's also been new streetscape and infrastructure improvements that have made the area walkable and transit supportive. Phase 3, part of which is before you today, consists of 160 units in the green buildings here that will be completed in 2 subphases. The Bessemer at Seward Commons, which is here and runs along Snelling Avenue, includes 128 market rate units and is a partner project between Seward Redesign and Schaefer Richardson. Wadig Commons, which is phase 3B across the street here, is proposed to be 32 units, affordable to families at 60% AMI or below, and that is a partnership project between Seward Redesign and NOR companies. These projects will be transit and bike oriented and will provide direct access to the Hiawatha LRT pedestrian and bike path. Seward Redesign and the project partners are requesting approximately $4 million in tax increment financing, or TIF, to support these 2 buildings here in green. The Bessemer, which again is this larger project here, includes 28 studios, 67 one-bedrooms, and 33 two-bedroom units. The project also includes 77 underground parking spaces. The estimated total development cost of the Bessemer is $32,554,946. Primary financing for this project includes a Freddie Mac permanent mortgage, developer equity, and TIF. The developer partners also secured $600,000 in TOD funds from Hennepin County, and as well as several environmental grants to support the cleanup of the site. Developer equity in the Bessemer includes partner cash of $585,000, $6 million in equity, and a deferred developer fee of $2.2 million. There are a number of actions before you, but the first staff recommendation is to establish a new redevelopment TIF district for the Bessemer project. The city will issue a TIF pay-as-you-go note not to exceed $3.476 million. Staff has reviewed the other sources included in this project and concluded that each source has been maximized to the extent possible, and the amount of TIF recommended is the lowest amount necessary for the project to proceed. It is currently projected that the note on this project would be paid back in 20 years, and the developer has agreed to the city's proposed recapture provisions. The second set, here's the recommendations, is related to the requested parkland dedication waiver. Redesign and Schaefer Richardson are requesting a waiver of the parkland dedication fee requirement for the Bessemer in exchange for constructing a public trail connection that links the Hiawatha LRT Trail to 22nd Street. So here's a closer site plan, and you can see this is the proposed trail construction, which goes on both Bessemer property here and then public right-of-way. This trail segment will provide a connection between the heavily used Hiawatha LRT Trail and the Seward neighborhood, as well as to Matthews Park and Triangle Park. And then the third set of staff recommendations relates to an existing city TOD loan and redevelopment agreement associated with the original acquisition of this property back in 2009. These recommendations will support the future WADEG development, as well as rehabilitation of the building at 2215 Snelling Avenue. Closing on the Bessemer project will result in a partial repayment on the city's TOD loan, and staff recommends that this partial repayment of the city TOD loan be held and reserved for the WADEG project. Staff will return to the council with the terms of those funds at a later time, and the remaining balance of the city TOD loan will be secured by the WADEG site. Seward Redesign is also planning a significant rehab of 2215 Snelling Avenue, which is this building in orange here, also known as the Focus Arts Building. And they have signed a lease with an established arts and education-based organization to be the anchor tenant there. The goal of this planned rehab is to provide long-term affordable space for arts organizations and creative businesses. This rehab work is planned to be finished March of next year, and these actions will help facilitate the private financing of that rehab. So with that, that's my report. I'm available for questions, and there's also representatives from Seward Redesign here and Schaefer Richardson.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions. I think that we'll let, if Redesign and Schaefer Richardson would like to speak, they could speak at the public hearing. And I think I'll just go ahead and open the public hearing right now. Thank you for that great report. Is there anybody who would wish to speak? You could just...
Good afternoon. My name is Sheldon Mane. I live at 2718 East 24th Street in Seward. We bought our house in 1978 in Seward when my wife started veterinary school, and we've lived there ever since. 3 quick points. One is a great thank you to staff for a very thorough and complete report. It covered everything and then some. Secondly, this project has been before the Seward Neighborhood Group, the neighborhood organization in Seward, numerous times since 2009, and has always had lots of support. It is strongly supported by the neighborhood group. I think you have some public comments that were included, including, I know, from the Milwaukee Avenue Homeowners Association. Third, just a comment on tax increment. I've always viewed tax increment, one of the purposes is to deal with market failure. It was used to start the North Loop. It was used on the east side of the river. It was used in downtown East. Those were all the first housing projects in all those places were tax increment financing. In the 40-plus years we've lived in Seward. Back in 1985, I think, there was a apartment building built near where the Greenway is now in 35th Avenue. That was the last non-income limited project in Seward. So we clearly have some type of market failure there, and we hope this will really get the market going. Right now it's in a impacted census tract, and this will give us some market rate development, which is sorely needed in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak? It's up to you. It's not necessary, but
I know it's not necessary, but I too want to thank staff for all the hard work that's gone into this project and for the council for supporting this project. This is a development that we have worked on diligently for a full 10 years and then some. I mean, it took a few years of work with staff and the council to do the initial acquisition. I know that the tax increment decision is one that you spend a lot of care examining. I think this is a project, though, that the city will be able to be proud of. The community and I think the city were pretty clear when we started this project that we wanted to see a balance of different housing types on this project. Everything that we've developed up until now has been deeply affordable. The project that's proposed after this will be deeply affordable and will be designed to serve families in the neighborhood. This project helps provide that balance by giving members of the community some opportunity to have access to market rate housing without income limits. So we thank you for your support. We will deliver a good project to you.
thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward and speak? Seeing none, then I'll close the public hearing. Well, I will move approval forward of the actions as described in the staff report. Any comments or questions on the motions? Seeing none, then all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Say that carries. Thank you very much and congratulations. I know we'll be excited to see what the next steps are and also when this opens. So appreciate all the work everybody put into that. So now we'll move on to our final discussion item. This is a report on our stable homes, stable schools, a quarterly report we asked for, and I believe we have a few people who might be involved in the presentation, but will be kicked off by Ms. Topanga. Welcome.
Yes, thank you, Chair Gordon and committee members. Kati Topanga of CPED Housing. And this is our second quarterly report to your committee to bring updates on the Stable Homes, Stable Schools program. The updates we'll be sharing today are the status of the program through September 30th. And as a reminder, the program began running on April 1st of this year. Kyle Hansen from Minneapolis Public Housing Authority will come up in a moment to present details about the progress. And then Charlotte Kinsley from Minneapolis Public Schools is also here to share some updates on how the program is working in the schools. And so, as you'll recall, we also have a steering committee that is meeting quarterly, made up of the mayor, Councilmember Schrader and Cunningham, county commissioners, and executive directors from all of the partner organizations. The steering committee met again a couple of weeks ago and heard more about the supportive services being provided by the YMCA as part of the program. Moving forward, we'll be bringing policy questions forward to the steering committee. We've also had requests to share lessons we're learning from collaborating with all of the project partners that could be replicated in other programs. So we're keeping track of those, and we'll be sharing those and can also share those with you here. And then the steering committee also requested information about barriers that we may run into that they can help us figure out how to overcome. So again, just wanted to put this slide in the report again as a reminder of how the program works. Families are identified by MPS school social workers and referred to MPHA for either rental assistance or the Housing Stability Program, which is funded by the POLAD Family Foundation, and that provides one-time assistance to families at risk of homelessness. So before I turn it over to Kyle to get into the specific results through September 30th, I wanted to touch on some of the highlights and challenges we've experienced, many of which are similar to what we reported to you in July. The program rollout continues to go really well. Partners are being really strategic about the way they refer families. For example, enrollment is spread out among the 15 MPS schools that are participating in the program, so that social workers can stagger how they're referring families so that we don't have families from the same schools out searching for housing, too many families in the same school out searching for housing in the same busing zone, so that they are competing for the same units, so trying to be strategic about the way those referrals are happening. And then also the deliberate rollout helps to ensure that the staff from the YMCA who are providing services can provide full support to the families so that they can successfully attain housing. And so I just also wanted to touch on the budget. We have spent, as of September 30th, just over $265,000 on the rental assistance side of the program. That's separate from the housing stability funds, and you'll get a report on that too. This is double what we had spent in the first quarter, and we're confident that spending will continue to increase as families are housed. And it was really critical to have the full budget amount in place to get the program off the ground and fully staffed. And we're confident that as more families are enrolled and housed, the funds will be utilized. And we continue to see enrollment increase and strong demand for the program, which Kyle and Charlotte will talk a bit more about. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kyle to give some more updates on the status of the program to date.
Welcome. Good to see you again.
Great. Good to see you. Chair Gordon, committee members, I just wanted to take some time to quickly update you on the numbers on the program. We continue to see referrals happening. We've had a total of 93 referrals so far. 28 of those families, for one reason or another, did not fit the guidelines of the program and were referred over to the YMCA for other types of services. We have identified so far 65 eligible families. There are 10 who are in process right now with applications. We have 22 who the YMCA staff are out searching for housing with, trying to locate units for them. We have 8 families that are approved for housing and are just waiting for the unit to turn over. And we have successfully housed 25 families. So within those 65 families that are eligible for the program, we have over 230 children who have already been affected by this program. The Housing Stability Fund, those are the POLAD fund dollars. We have, and these are to keep people in their homes. These are not currently homeless families, but these are families who are facing some instability. We've had 134 referrals. Of those, 94 were deemed eligible for the program. And of those, we have 1 in process, 17 that are just waiting for the check to be cut, and 76 of those families have received assistance. So within the POLAD program, already we have 256 children whose lives have been affected by the funds that have been made available.
Could you just remind us or update us on what kind of assistance that is? Is it a month's rent? Is that?
So it varies. And on the next page here, it does break it down. So, so the Housing Stability Fund, one of the really interesting things that has come from this, and it was one of the goals of the program, is that of the families that we've helped, 95% of those families have remained in the school that they started with, which was part of the whole goal of this program, was to provide that stability in education as well as housing. So that has been successful and has worked well. As you can see, the total awards to date are $86,940. The majority of that is unpaid rent that we have managed to make up for. Some were about 16% utilities, 8% security deposits for people who needed to identify a new unit, eviction and court settlements, and then other things such as medical, transportation costs, or other things. The demographics of the eligible families, I don't think there are any surprises here, but it does fit with the goals of the program to focus on families who are disproportionately displaced within the city. And you can see the breakdown there. Mainly single-parent households on both programs, and high proportions of people of color. One of the other goals of the program was to target children in those early ages, between the ages of 6 and 12. Every study that I have read has shown that the biggest impact on a child happens during those years, and if you can stabilize the family during those years, the outcomes for the child are improved greatly later in life. So as you can see, of the children on the program that have been deemed eligible, the main target area was at ages 6 through 12, and the vast majority of students are fall into that category. Other family members on the program then are pre-K, and then a few up through the high school ages. At this time, I will turn it over to Charlotte from the public schools, who has some information about the school process.
Welcome.
Hi, Chair Gordon, committee members, thank you. So this slide here is just showing out of the 15 schools where we're seeing those referrals. And so you can see that they're sort of evenly distributed across the city. The Housing Stability Fund, the eviction prevention is in blue there, and then the rental assistance is in the maroon. Any questions on this?
I have one question. Are there particular areas where we're having trouble finding units for rent?
Some areas are definitely more challenging than others, and some of that is around the bus zone and how small. Some bus zones are smaller than others, so yes, some schools are definitely more challenging than others.
And the units offered by landlords, the little squares, those are not just offered, but ones that were used, or?
Yeah, so those are units that are either part of that families that have already been housed, or are in the process of matching a family.
Okay, so open, all right, thank you. Hopefully everybody could hear that at home.
And I wanted to share with you our numbers from last school year, so the 2018-19 school year, of the students that we identified as homeless or highly mobile. I wanted to point out a couple things. One is if you look at the location where students are being identified, we saw for the first time over half of our students that were in a doubled up situation, so meaning that they were not in a formal shelter setting, but they were staying with family or friends temporarily because they couldn't find anywhere else to go. And I think that is significant for a couple different reasons. One, from our perspective at the school, families who are doubled up are particularly vulnerable or at risk. Any experience of homelessness we know is challenging or traumatic, but for us, in terms of maintaining attendance and support of families, when you're in a shelter setting, you do have access to school buses coming regularly. You have sometimes after school tutoring programs. We have staff on site at shelters. Where our doubled up families are, it's just much harder, and they're often moving more regularly. So it's really hard for us to even keep up with transportation when families are moving regularly. And so I think that also demonstrates that's one of our priorities when we're referring families, that school social workers are taking that into consideration if they're doubled up, using that as one of the markers of prioritizing a family. And so I think that validates that focus for us. Any questions on the data or the numbers?
No, I don't see any, thank you.
I guess I just want to say before we move to, I have a family story, but just how it hasn't been that long that we've been doing this, but the impact that we've seen at the school level has been really incredible. We have families that we've been transporting from all over the metro who are now in the neighborhood of their school, and that is so powerful. We had one of my favorite stories is a school social worker at the open house this year had a mom just come and throw her arms around her, and she didn't know what was going on, but this family had been referred over the summer, had found housing. I think this family had even walked to the open house. They were that close, and we'd been transporting that family from Egan about half the school year last year because they were doubled up out in Egan in a homeless situation. So I think that just demonstrates in a small way how impactful it's been for us at the schools. School social workers and teachers have known for a long time how housing instability impacts students in the classroom. It's one of the greatest risk factors for not graduating. We just haven't had a pathway to be able to actually do something about it. And so it's been very appreciated at the school site and by the families, of course, that we're serving.
Councilmember Benton has a question.
Maybe this is the best time to ask, and then kind of let you close with it. So I just have a couple of specific questions, maybe back to the last slide about now that there's been a little time experiencing with the program. I wondered if you or others could talk about what are the barriers to getting more families enrolled? Is it staff capacity or units available? And then I have a second question about how this is being staffed and how that's going.
Yeah, so in terms of the challenge, definitely units. I think that's been our biggest barrier. Do you want to? Okay.
So I think clearly we're trying to be very intentional about not flooding certain market areas with too many families. With the vacancy rate the way it is in the city of Minneapolis, it is very tough to find housing right now. So there was also initial ramp up. We had to do some hiring and get folks acclimated, get them trained on the systems and what it is we're doing. So I think that we're up to capacity now, and we've kind of hit our stride of what numbers we can handle. I do think that, as you can see, the numbers have jumped and will, I think, continue to jump now through the rest of the year. We had the summer to kind of settle in on that. The biggest barrier, however, continues to be locating that unit. What I will say is that the average search time for these families is about 40 days less than a regular voucher holder. So we are having more success because of the services provided by the Y, where there's that one-on-one contact. And because it's a specialized program that comes with services, property owners have been more willing to participate in the program. So I think we continue to try to keep that balance. We know that there are many more families that could be helped, and we will have to continue as we meet monthly to kind of reevaluate that and see if at a certain point we want to ramp up further, if the market changes at all, and we'll keep talking about that every month as we meet.
Did you get your question about the staffing answered?
No, but I didn't really ask it either.
You want to ask that again?
Yeah, so I am interested in how this is being staffed, especially at the city side. Maybe that's a question to Director Frank. I mean, how much of an FTE's worth of time is going into this program? And then I wondered, how the collaboration is going between the different agencies, and if there's thoughts about staffing again now that you've had some time to get this going.
Would you like to answer that first, Katie?
Sure. I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's just
Sure. So I think I caught all the question, but so from the city standpoint, I am the point person at CPED working on this. The day-to-day running of this program is really being handled at Minneapolis Public Housing Authority and through the school social workers. So I don't know the exact breakdown of the time, but it's certainly not a significant amount of time. Part of my role from the city staff side is convening the monthly meetings that we have with all of the program partners, helping to convene the steering committee, and then also just overseeing the contract that we have with MPHA. But then MPHA, as well as the YMCA, are providing, and the schools are providing the day-to-day staffing of the program.
If you want to say anything more about that, you're welcome. Or
Yeah,
one last
I
question.
think we have dedicated staff people at the Housing Authority. We have a full-time person on the POLAD funds, and we have a full-time person that is working with the families on the regular program. All the other services are being provided by the Y. And then my time is, kind of monthly monitoring, reporting, and we have a data person who pulls the statistics for us. But
Yeah.
Councilmember Good.
Thank you. I also have a number of questions, but I want to add on to that one. The staff people from the POLAD money are coming out of the POLAD grant, or that's coming out of public housing and public schools? And on the other side of it, is the money coming out of the grant, or is that money that you guys are partnering to do this program? I'd like a full accounting of the $3 million, how much has been sent out the door, what it's been spent on. It feels to me like more money's been spent staffing this thing than actually getting families housed and emergency assistance. But I could be wrong. I'm just going by these numbers. I'm also interested right now in how much money has gone out the door in your month 10 of $3 million.
right. So, Katie, perhaps you could pull a more detailed report on the funds spent. I don't have that total right in front of me, but spending on the program is at that number that was in the presentation earlier. So the total expenditures for the program thus far is $265,000 out of the $3.2 million that was allocated. And that's because of the ramp-up period, getting families on. The $3.2 million that was budgeted is enough to serve 320 families full-time on the program consistently. And we knew that it was going to take some time to get ramped up to that place. That said, the POLAD funds are paying for the POLAD staff person. That is partially paid out of their funds. The rest of it comes out of MPHA's annual budget. Part of the funds are paying for our staff person to cover the costs to run the program, so that person who's working directly with the people. But the monies that we're receiving don't cover all of the costs for benefits, other things. So we do cover part of those salaries. We recoup an administrative fee, but it's set at less than 8% of the total amount expended. So I can tell you that MPHA has put a lot more money into this than we have recouped from fees or other things. And then the YMCA contract is fully funded as part of the agreement. That funding for their staffing and program pieces are all covered 100% through the city funding.
Okay, so thank you for that. I guess what I would like to see from the folks at public housing or public schools is the $3.2 million and how much has been spent in each category to date.
Okay.
I mean, I got to be honest. I'm just thinking you've spent like $400,000. You have $3.2 million. Do we need to put another $3 million in next year to sit into an account? I don't think so. Because why don't we spend down some of that money and get the other money out the door on some other worthy thing?
So we certainly can gather that information for you.
I want to clarify, was the intention to spend the $3 million in 1 year or in 3 years?
One.
One. The mayor's proposed budget has another 3 for next year.
Okay.
Right. So just in the interest of clarity, we're talking about, we haven't even spent the 3.2, and we're talking about putting $3 more million in, and we haven't spent anywhere near that, and that could probably be spent on other things that are more pressing in terms of housing to get that money out the door. I'm not saying you're not doing good work, you're doing great work, but we don't need to sit on $5 million balance either.
Right.
So how much do you think you'll be able to spend by the end of the year at this?
Well, again, at this rate, it'll be pushing $1 million by the end of the year.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have one other question, if it's okay.
Yep, go ahead, and then we're going to go back to our family.
Yes, I wanted to end on that.
Yeah, we should.
Positive note, right? Instead of all these technical questions.
We'll see how it works, but yeah, we'll try that.
I think my question is on slide 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's the slide that's about the Housing Stability Fund. And I was just curious because we've had so much discussion about county emergency assistance dollars. The county is not spending millions of dollars in emergency assistance funds. And I just wondered how many of these things are eligible for those dollars, and then it seems like some of them are, and then, you know, why is this program stepping in where the county?
So I can't speak to specifics on it, but what I can tell you is that many of these families, because of the very strict regulations on qualifying for county assistance, this is a much lower barrier program. So it's meant to be quick. It's meant to be easy. It's not meant to, you know, set up all these parameters that you have to qualify for.
I mean, one might hope that the county's program would eventually function in a quick and easy way for low-income families.
Right. Well, I can't comment on that, but this was meant to be a different qualifying. So indeed, while there may be some crossover qualification between the two places, there are many circumstances where this program covers funds for families that are kind of caught in that middle space.
Can I just make a comment though?
Absolutely.
That's very helpful, thank you. And maybe I will follow up, and maybe it's just something to kind of track and think about if it's a administrative barrier or, you know, a real programmatic difference, because I think, you know, for our families across the city, having those funds be so difficult to access has been a real challenge. I did want to comment on the point that Councilmember Goodman made, which is, you know, a $3 million investment is about 1% of our levy, and we're seeing a really high levy increase this year, which is, I mean, you know, which is in part capturing growth that's happening in our city, but also because values are going up across the city is really affecting people in our low-income neighborhoods and our lower-income households as well. And so I think we hit a point where the question becomes, you know, how much are we affecting housing costs and housing instability through property taxes versus investing in programs that are designed to help. And so I think I would echo the question, which is not, should we continue to invest in this worthy program? But, you know, how does the timing make sense? And does it make sense to levy millions more dollars when we're spending hundreds of thousands or $1 million or so? So I think that's just an ongoing question for us to keep asking, and wouldn't mean that we aren't supportive of the program or the direction it's going.
Absolutely.
And I think,
Any other questions? Great. Thank you. Sean?
thank you very much. Now let's get back to the presentation.
All right. Just one other comment before I go to the story. One of the things that we're really excited about is that now that we're in the phase of actually families being housed, that's sort of where our work begins. So really being intentional about making sure that when we've looked at other models of a housing and a school partnership, housing isn't enough. We also need some of this wraparound if we're going to see education outcomes. And so that becomes then our task, is once families are housed as a school, wrapping our arms kind of around that family with whatever their needs might be and their strengths are, to make sure that we do see those outcomes that we'll show in a minute, but the increase in attendance and behavior and education outcomes that we hope to see. And now the fun part. So we have lots of success stories, but this is just the one that we decided to share with you today. So Ahmed and Hoda have a first grader at Pillsbury, a 4-year-old and a 6-month-old. And they moved to Minnesota in November of 2018. They had been laid off and had friends here that said that, you know, this is a good place to come if you're looking for work. So they came and they found jobs right away, both of them. But they were still really struggling to be able to afford housing, and they were finding that they were being asked to make 3 times the rent, and were just really struggling with that process, and ended up in shelter at Mary's Place. And their thought was that they would save up enough money for a damage deposit and first month's rent and then move out. And what they ended up finding is that they had trouble maintaining their employment because of transportation barriers. And so they kind of shifted their strategy and decided to invest in a vehicle so they'd have more options. So they did that. They saved up their money, they bought a vehicle, their employment stabilized, and they still were struggling to find something. And so over the summer, they were referred to Stable Home, Stable Schools, and they say it's like a new beginning for them. Within 1 week of being connected with their YMCA family support specialist, they were in their own home. They got referred to bridging, and they got furniture, and now Hoda's taking citizenship classes, and the way they describe it is they went from surviving to thriving, and they're just super grateful. And so I think it's one of many stories of how foundational housing is, and how, especially with just thinking about this family and all of the resilience that they've showed and persistence, that they're stable now. And so this is a launching pad for them to be able to be stable on their own. And now I'm going to give it back to Katie.
All right, thank you. And then we are wrapping up here. Just put this slide up again. We shared this last time as well, but this is just the planned evaluation metrics, and we are working on an evaluation with partners at the University of Minnesota. So we will have more to share. I think we'll have some initial metrics to share early next year, and then as we won't have a lot of the school performance results until 2021, just because there's a lag in that data. But just wanted to make sure you knew what we were tracking here. And then just closing with next steps. As we mentioned last time, we're working on creating a parent advisory council with some of the parents participating in the program to help with that evaluation of the program. And then the steering committee is meeting again in January, and we'll have another quarterly report early next year. And then just in terms of other next steps, following up on some of the questions raised about the budget, we will certainly follow up with all of you on some projections on what we would anticipate the spending to be, and some more details about that. And then also just wanted to comment that the budget size, the $3 million, was sized to serve 320 families over 3 years. And because it's rental assistance, it's sort of making a commitment to those families for that period of time to serve for, and that was the intention of the way the program was set up, to serve families over 3 years. So just wanted to make that comment, but we'll send you some follow-up information with projections on what we expect the spending to be in the coming months.
So I was correct thinking the $3 million was supposed to last 3 years?
It's $3 million per year.
Per year,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I see. I was incorrect. Thanks for that. Are there other questions or comments anyone wants to make?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think this was a really great partnership, and I really especially want to lift up the work of the school. I'm an MPS parent, and to see our school system get so active in housing our kids is really cool and exciting. And on top of all the other things that the district is doing to serve our families, I think it's really unique and important to just thank you for that. And of course, our city and Public Housing Authority too.
We've also been graced with Councilmember Cunningham's presence, and you have a comment to make.
Yes, thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing me to speak, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say thank you for everyone who's been working so hard on this program. Northside kids are greatly benefiting from this program, and you can see that reflected in the numbers. I'm hearing it as a council member about how impactful this has been. And speaking from a systemic perspective, it's a really big deal. We've been able to operationalize an interjurisdictional cross-sector coalition for a program in such a short period of time. Typically, these sort of initiatives take at least a year to even get operationalized, let alone getting families served and kids stabilized. And we've been able to see it ramp up and also actually be implemented within the first year, and I think that's really quite amazing. And we're seeing the positive impacts. We have a system that's in place, and so I think that it's really wonderful how intentional and committed every single partner has been at the table. There are a lot of partners, which makes it even more remarkable that it has been so successfully operationalized in such a short period of time. There was never the expectation that from day one, all of a sudden money would be going out the door, because it was a program that needed to be developed and operationalized to be implemented. And so I think that what we've seen is really significant impacts that are only going to grow as we continue to scale up, as we continue to have funding for the program. We're going to see more kids impacted. Like, these are real lives. These are real people who are being positively impacted. There are so many clear indicators about the impacts of homelessness and the risk factors that increases for a whole slew of negative outcomes for real kids. Like, these are real human beings. We look at numbers and we can say, cool, there's 15 kids who are being served at this school or that school, but that's a huge deal, or 15 families, I should say. Like, that's a huge deal for those families, and it has ripple effects for generations and also for the folks around them. So thank you all so much for all this intentionality. Thank you for the information, and I'm grateful to be a part of the steering committee.
Thanks so much for being here and for sharing your thoughts. I'll just also note that I know that it's a lot to expect you folks to come every quarter and report in on this and gather up the information and the data, but it's really helpful and it's useful for us to know, and I also think to help hold us accountable to the public at large, and appreciate the great report and you being here and the investment that you're making in it and helping us understand it better. So with that, I'll move to receive and file this report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And with that, we've completed our business. Thanks, everybody. We're adjourned.